and welcome back to the Irish Mags Show, brought to you by the Irish Mags NUFC Supporters Group. My name is Paul. I will be your host for today for episode 6. And I can tell you that episode 6 is an extra special episode for you today. Not only am I joined by the usual suspects in Alan and Krisho, and you'll note I didn't put talented in there this time, lads. I've managed to remove that when you keep the talent back. But we are delighted to welcome a very special guest to the Irish Mags Show this week, coming to us live all the way from California, and it looks a lot sunnier on my screen than it is in Ireland, I can tell you that much. It's a man whose playing career spanned 16 years, during which he made 277 Premier League appearances, and specifically wore the Newcastle United #2 shirt 218 times, scoring 5 goals with 16 assists, not to mention making 4 Champions League appearances and earning 3 England caps. It is, of course, former Newcastle United legend, Mr. Warren Barton, now the current director and youth academy coach of Del Mar Carmel Valley Sharks in San Diego, California. Welcome in, lads, and of course, welcome in Warren Barton.
Thank you very much. Very nice intro as well. But yeah, Happy New Year to everybody. It's nice to come across the pond and speak to the people there in Ireland, and obviously it's been a pretty good weekend for Newcastle, so we can enjoy it. The sun's out for me, and obviously keep a big eye out and a big heart out for Newcastle over the last few years. Obviously being there as a player, captain, it's a great place, great fans, and you know that better than anybody. It's the best club in the world.
Absolutely. And we cannot disagree with that.
And it breaks your heart a few times as well, just to say, it breaks your heart a few times. So it's not all roses. We know that, being Newcastle.
Absolutely, Warren. And I can tell you, between the three of us who have probably a combined 70 or 80 years of supporting Newcastle, we've all been through the good times and the bad. But thankfully, we're seeing a lot of the good times more recently.
Thank God.
One thing we need to point out, Warren, actually, of course, you know, this is your first time joining the Irish Mag Show, but technically you're here every week, Warren, because just over my shoulder, you may see up in the top corner here is your Corinthians figurine from the 95-96 season that I've had since I was quite a small kid, and it's managed to stay with me all these years. I just need to ask you: do you have one yourself, or?
I do. I'm embarrassed to say, but I do. My son's got it in his bedroom as well, and I've got an England one and a Newcastle one, and the hair's a bit different now.
I have to bring it for a close-up.
But the tan is still there. The tan is still there, but the hair's changed a little bit. So yeah, you're not the only one. They're antiques now. They're antiques now, Paul. They're antiques.
Worth a fortune.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, you're up there in Pride Place with Tino Asprilla, Rob Lee, Les Ferdinand, and Peter Beardsley. You're among good company on the
good
show.
Company up there. Yeah.
As much as my other half loves me having them on display here in the apartment. So, right, so folks, we have an action-packed show today, not least because we have a little bit of discussion to do about that game at the weekend, the Little Tyne-Weir derby. It was the first one in 8 years. We'll also be picking Warren's brain about that, having played in a few of them, as we well know. Before we get to that, though, we do want to place most of our attention on Warren. Of course, Warren, we're going to put you under the spotlight a little bit, but with the standard Irish hospitality you would expect from 3 Irish lads. Because we do have some questions that we'd love to get through for our listeners, because let's face it, the majority of our listeners, like ourselves, will remember particularly the entertainers' days, and will obviously have been supporting Newcastle as long as we have, and definitely remember, as we've said, the good times and the bad ones, but we'll talk a lot about the good ones. So we'll move into some questions for you, Warren. The first thing we want to ask you was, how was your Christmas? How was the festive period, New Year's? Were you abroad for it? Were you over in California, and how did that go?
No, I had a great Christmas. I went over to London, went over to the UK to see my mum, my brother, and my sister. I took over my grandchildren. That makes you feel old as well. So I got grandchildren to go over there. So I took the whole family. I wasn't able to get up to the Nottingham Forest game, thankfully. I wasn't able to do that. And I didn't have time to go to Anfield either, thankfully for that. But yeah, I had a great holiday period. Come back. I'm not really a New Year's Eve guy. I'm not really into that. So we did the Christmas time, and my kids went and watched some games out there. But it was back to go and see my old mum, make sure she was good. had some good times, had some good food, and come back to the sunshine. So pretty good for me, guys. Pretty good for me. It was all good, and that's the second time I've mentioned the sunshine in the first 4.5 minutes. There could be a theme coming along here.
You're warming us up. You're warming us up.
When this kind of thing happens, we get the jar out and we tell you, well, for you, you'd have to put $1 in the jar now every time you mention it. And that can go towards the Irish Mags Flag Fund. But we won't do that just yet. Ideal. Excellent. Great to hear. And of course, Happy New Year to everyone once again. I think, Warren, before we delve into your playing career at obviously we're going to talk a lot about Newcastle, but we know there was more to your career than Newcastle, of course. So before we kind of dive into the Newcastle specifics, we'd love to hear a little bit about your origins as a footballer, and particularly your playing position, because I suppose most of our listeners, and particularly Newcastle fans, would remember you as playing right back and having that number 2 kit for Newcastle. But it's fair to say you weren't always a defender and specifically a right back. Is that right?
That's correct. I mean, at the age of 16 and 13, I got told I was too small. The legendary Frank Clark, actually, Newcastle legend left back, was at Leyton Orient. And I was there as a kid. And actually then I was playing in midfield. When I did play at fullback for Newcastle, one of my strengths was my engine. I could run all day long. I was pretty athletic at the time. And at that time with fullbacks, it was starting to change a little bit. Rather than just being a regimented defender, they was asked to go forward to express themselves. So as my career sort of went forward with the Crazy Gang, so I've gone from being an entertainer to one of the Crazy Gang members. We was pretty athletic, our training, our pre-season training. We probably didn't touch a ball for the first 2 weeks. It was about running and being fitter than anybody else and stronger than anybody else. And that was part of my game. And as I did at Wimbledon, I played that midfield area. And actually, Kenny Dalglish, when he first come to Newcastle, he tried to buy me at Blackburn as a midfield player, and that didn't pan out. A year beforehand, I was supposed to be going up to Ewood Park with Kenny, and then when he come in, he played me in midfield. And actually, Kevin Keegan had seen me play midfield and liked me in that position as well. But because of the circumstances of Lee Clark, Rob Lee, that spot on the right hand side opened up, and particularly the way we played with KK with the entertainers. He wanted us to get forward. He wanted us to go and express ourselves. So playing in that position sort of suited me. But yeah, I was, a little bit of a versatile player. But I particularly liked playing as a fullback, getting forward, taking people on, trying to create chances as I did, and probably trying to hide my deficiencies as a defender was to say, well, I'm going to push you back the other way. But to be honest with you, as long as I was playing, I was out there. I wanted to play, but I did have that in my area that I could play as a midfield player and obviously as a fullback. And so Bobby played me as centre half. We went out to Roma in the UEFA Cup competition, and he played me as a centre half as well, which I enjoyed. I could read the game reasonably well and was comfortable on the ball. So yeah, it gives you another string to your bow. And it was able to, like you said, to go and play over 200 odd games for Newcastle, which was always a pleasure. And as I said, every time I played, I was thoroughly enjoyed that occasion. But yeah, I could play in a few different positions. I didn't want to be known as a jack of all trade and master of none, but I felt like right back was my best position.
Agreed.
I feel like we've almost come full circle, because you mentioned there in those days under Kevin Keegan, it was about being the fittest team, the fastest team, that high intensity. And obviously we're seeing the same now with present day Newcastle. I definitely wasn't always the case in the years that have passed since. And then you've talked about, drifting, let's say, playing it right back, but also stepping into midfield. We've seen that role almost evolve as well. So there's a lot of narrative, I think, connecting, I suppose, those days with now and how we've kind of circled around. Sticking with that theme then, Warren, I suppose we could talk about that famous move to Newcastle, right? Which is the reason, obviously, all those years later, you've ended up here with 3 Irishmen on the Irish Mags show. This was a time when Kevin Keegan was building the famous entertainers era. He made you the most expensive defender in English football history at the time. I was actually going to say, were there any other clubs in the conversation? But you have alluded to Kenny Dalglish having one eye on you when he was at Blackburn. But what was it for you moving to Newcastle? What was it that sealed the deal for you? Was it a case of making a choice, or was it an easy choice in terms of making the decision to move to Newcastle? And how did it feel pulling on that very, very famous black and white kit, which is arguably now one of the best and most well-known that the Premier League has seen.
Yeah, it's a very iconic shirt at the time. And yeah, there was interest. You know, I was born up in London. I was an Arsenal fan, and I'd spoken to David Dean in the spring, in April, about going to Arsenal at the time. But Arsene Wenger wasn't coming until October. Trevor Francis, the late great Trevor Francis, I'd spoken to him at Sheffield Wednesday. Tommy Burns, who was up at Celtic. So there was quite a bit of interest. But I met Kevin Keegan in London, a bank holiday Monday. You probably remember Newcastle played Blackburn, and Alan Shearer scored at the far post actually against John Beresford and got the winner up there for them to go and push for the title. And he'd come all the way down to see me and said, look, you know, meet me in the hotel. And he just walked up to me and said, come and join a big club. And when you have someone like him say that in them words, so confident about what he was going to do, I'd obviously seen how well Newcastle had been playing, played up there and done a cool down after for Wimbledon on the van, and said, you know, one of my friends at the time, you know, imagine playing for this club in this area. Spoke to Arthur Cox in that hotel that night about the club and just about football in general and about what was going along. And me and Les Ferdinand was in the England squad at the time, getting ready for Euro 96, and we was always linked together, you know, whether it was Arsenal, Blackburn and Newcastle. And we kept saying every time we'd meet up with England, he's like, well, where are you going? Where are you going? And we ended up sealing a deal together 2 days apart. And it was just a very, very exciting time. The Premier League at that time was exploding to what it is now. You know, the nature of the game, the players that was coming in, you know, people like George Ware, Ruud Gullit was players coming into the league. And really setting the tone of what the Premier League was going to be like for the next 20, 25 years. And to be part of that, and as I said earlier on, being told you're too small, never going to make it, them being the most expensive defender at the time, British defender at the time, was a great honour, and really proud of being that. But, you know, Rob Lee tells a story as well, and Les and David Ginola, when KK comes up to you and the way he is, and he doesn't have to sell the club, he doesn't have to sell himself. It's just true of what it is. And to go up there, to Peter, you know, I was speaking to Peter Beardsley at the time with England, and, you know, Barry Venison, who was a great servant for Liverpool and Newcastle, he actually knew I was coming to take his place in theory, as it looked like. And when we was England together, he'd said to me, he said, like, and I still see Barry in Los Angeles now very, very occasionally. He one that said, like, you know, you've got to go. It's going to be a great time. You're going to love it up there. The people are going to love you. You're going to love playing football up there. You know, don't worry about it being North and things like that. It's a special club, special people. And that was someone that was going out the door. So Venners was always great to me at that time. So, you know, put Peter Beardsley involved, Les Ferdinand, Kevin Keegan. And, you know, I did have choices, but there was no choice in the end. It was a simple decision to make. We didn't even talk about money. You know, when I met Kevin and my agent and the club, it was never about the money. It was about winning things, challenging for things, trying to compete. And it was a great honour to do that, to go onto the field, to wear that iconic black and white shirt now with a big Newcastle Brownell sign on it and be part of that team. And that time in Newcastle, it is special. You know, the people remember you fondly. We had a great connection with the fans. Probably used to mix too much with them in the big market and down at the quayside, but we used to mix with them, and it was a wonderful time. It's a special time in my life. You know, we got to cup finals, played in the Champions League, challenging for titles, and, you know, all them players, you know, Philip Albert, John Beresford, the late Pavel Cernacek, Shako Hislop, Ginola, Peter, you know, all of them players, lads, was great people as well to be around, fun to be around, good people to share the changing room with. And, you know, unfortunately, gentlemen, we failed. You know, we come up short when we should have won the title. And that will always haunt us, you know, to this day. Every day I think about that. And it's not necessarily, and we say the same things, it's not about me having a Premier League medal. It's about Newcastle having that on their shelf to say, look, they've done that. And unfortunately, we failed. But the good times are back. And hopefully with this ownership and the manager and the players, they bring back that enjoyment. And I think they're doing that. And because it is a special place. Until you've been up there and you live up there, you know, people say about the area that they haven't got a clue. The fans are, you know, whether you're from Ireland or whether you're from Hong Kong or whether you're from Wallsend, you have that same passion and that same determination and that same undoubting love for the club and the players and and the area. And it's a special club, and you know, special times are ahead. But yeah, it was a great time. I mean, I think you can tell by the way I'm speaking, it was an emotional time and a good time, and we had a lot of fun. We had a lot of fun up there, and as I said, the only thing against us all really is that we failed in the long run to not bring the trophy for Sir John Hall and the club, and for the fans most importantly.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned the word failure there, and yes, it'll be always for a lot of us like an opportunity missed. But when people think about those days, particularly speaking as fans, it's hard to think about the word failure because it was just such a positive, successful era of good times, of good performances, and let's face it, superstars playing, as you said, Warren, in that infamous Newcastle brown ale kit, from all over, obviously, and not just local lads. Alan, I know Alan would like to jump in here, because Warren, you've talked a lot about some of the players that you would have played alongside, but I think we're interested to hear about the management aspect. Alan, I think you had a question there for Warren on that, didn't you?
I do. So during our 7 years at Newcastle, you experienced the highs of the Kevin Keegan era. I won't say the lows of the Dalglish and Hullett era, but it wasn't as high as the Keegan era. As a player, what was it like navigating those changes as different managers came through the door? Were they always kind of similar in their styles, or was there mass changes the second they walked through the doors?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. They're all legendary in their own right. You know, Ruud Hullett as a player, and what he brought to the game. Kenny Dalglish is Kenny Dalglish, and KK. For me, Sir Bobby was the best package because he tactically, the fans, the area, the humour, man management. I learned so much off of him, not only as a coach, but also as a person. But as a player, you're quite resilient. KK really took us all by surprise. It was only Alan Shearer that knew that he was leaving. We'd all gone there in principle, like I said, because of KK, you know, Ginola and Les and players, David Batty, Tino, as you said, who was behind you, was a big part of going because of KK. So when he left, it was a big void, and it hit us in the gut pretty hard, all of us. I never forget it. We was at Maiden Castle, we was upstairs, we had the Monday off, we'd heard about it, and we come in on the Tuesday, was getting ready to play Aston Villa, and Arthur Cox was there and Terry McDermott, and they both was devastated. They both wanted to leave, but they knew they had an obligation to at least see us through until we got a new manager coming in, whoever that would be. So when KK left, it was very, very difficult for us to comprehend, because we wanted to see it through. Yeah, I think we failed this season before, but we was in a good spot to go again and try and challenge United again. And, you know, for whatever reason, Kevin left and left us, you know, a little bit uncertainty of what we was doing. We was never going to jump ship, but we'd lost one of our leaders, and he was a big part of us taking us there. And Kenny Dalglish coming in so quickly, and because of his aura and his personality with us, maybe not with the media, he didn't show his personality, but it got us back into a mindset of playing for the game and trying to win a trophy. Obviously, he'd been very successful at Liverpool. He'd won the Premier League at Blackburn. He played, obviously, he'd had Alan as his player and had as a player as well with David Batty. So immediate respect from everybody. And the style of football was different. So, I mean, let's be honest about it. It wasn't, but it was about grinding out and winning. And that season, we ended up finishing second, getting to a cup final with a couple of 1-0 wins. One of them being at Goodison Park, and another one being at Highbury at the time to get us into that spot. So, you know, for him coming in, but players are resilient and they respect people. Kenny's time sort of faded with the fans more than anything, and the players that was coming into the club wasn't at the level that the fans was expecting and wanted, really. You know, he was bringing in players, you know, that had played at lower league and maybe coming in, and maybe that was the budget, but the fans didn't want to know about that. But as a core of players, myself, Alan, Rob, we like Kenny, and we was trying to do the best and obviously get everybody in the same position. Gary Speed had come, Shea had come. So there was a core of players that was, as Bobby said in the end, the blue chip players that kept the players together in unity to trying to do the right thing. There was no division. The problem when Ruud come in, straight away, he put Rob Lee to the side. He put Stuart Pearce. He put Nikos Dabizadze, John Barnes, who was big characters and big personalities and just pushed them aside. And, you know, excuse my language, it was like, you know, don't take the piss with our friends. They was friends of ours. Yes, it was about us, but, you know, one of my things was about keeping everybody together. So when Rob and Stuart was training with the kids, you know, Rude wanted, and Steve Clark was like, well, they can come in and eat later. And it was like, no, that ain't happening. You know, they can come and eat with us. And we used to sit at the table with Stuart, and it was difficult to do that because they've been friends of ours, and we'd played a lot of games. And Stuart Pearce is probably, and Rob Lee, probably, well, not so much Rob, but Stuart, one of the best professionals you're gonna be along with. And you know, that was difficult with Rude. And Rude's problem was his man management. You know, and he said, you know, the derby was a regional thing. And as soon as he said that, he didn't understand what the club was about. You know, Eddie said it, you know, jumping quickly, Eddie said it straight away. This is the biggest game of the season. It was. And I put it out on social media. It was a must win. Don't care how you do it. You beat Sunderland. You don't care how you do it. You don't lose to them. And obviously, you know, the famous game, Alan and Big Dunk wasn't playing. We lose the game. Kevin Phillips scores. And the rest is history. And obviously, Rude got on his plane, the first one out of there to Amsterdam. Good job he did, because Alan Shearer and Ferguson was banging at his door 7:30 in the morning and wanting to have a quiet word with him. So he probably did the right thing to get out of there. And then Sir Bobby come in, and it was back to Wonderland again. You know, knowing the fans, getting back. I mean, our first game we win 8-0. We was actually the first 15 minutes we was bloody awful and could have been 2 or 3-0 down, but it's sod's law. Sometimes you get a lucky result, you get a win. Shearer gets 5 goals. So Bobby, on the Thursday when he come in, said to Alan in front of all of us, why on earth are you coming to get the ball all the time? And Alan, being Alan, said, well, that fucking idiot told me to come and show for the ball. And so Bobby went, I don't. I want you facing the goal. And Alan gets 5 goals in the next game against Sheffield Wednesday. And we push on, and 18 months later, we're in the Champions League again, and we're competing. But as players, you're resilient. And when I never wanted to leave that club, because, as I said, I've been told twice I was too small. I'd had offers to maybe leave and go back down to South, but I wanted to be there as long as I could. I love the club. I love the people up there. And, you know, me and Rob Lee in particular, they had to drag us out of there at the end because, you know, so Bobby had said, right, your time had come and you need to leave and go to Derby. And we dug our heels in for a little bit longer. But in the end, me and Rob went off to Derby. And as I said, so Bobby got us back into that atmosphere of being proud to play for the club, being proud to support the club, not being a chore to go to St James's Park, not to be hard work. Although it was never like that with me. I always felt the fans wanted to be there. They were supporting. But I know under the Ashley time, there was a lot of times, and I've spoken to a lot of fans that didn't have the desire and the passion to go to St James's Park. It was like, I'm going to go, but maybe there's something else to do. Well, them good times are back now. People can't wait to be at the ground and be at the stadium. And, you know, I had 7 years of that. And as I said, I loved every minute of it.
Yeah, and I wanted to just expand on that, Warren, a small bit. You kind of said it yourself. You were arguably one of the constants, probably yourself and obviously Alan. I can just call him Alan. I know him very well, clearly. But you were one of the constants throughout that, you know, those changes. Alan said navigating those changes with Kevin Keegan, Kenny Dalglish, Ruud Gullit, and Bobby Robson. But we'd love to know, what was it about like they call it the Bobby Robson effect? Like, you know, for you to go to a new manager, like, is it as easy to think an instant just change of atmosphere, a change of environment, just by the man walking through the door? Like,
he had that. What was it? Yeah, really he has that aura about him. He has that. You know, he had that skip in his step. He couldn't stop smiling. We'd all known about him as a person, and he just made you feel great. You know, he went round. I mean, I was delighted he knew my name, you know, because he would forget a name now and again. We was all Barton, Speed, Given, Lee. But when he went up to Alan, he was Alan. He was Alan and stuff like that. And just the way he was, you know, the way he wanted us to be, and his talk. I never forget, you know, don't forget who you're playing for. Let's get back to that feel-good factor. And he just made you feel alive again. You know, we'd been drained. We'd been told that, you know, by Rude, that we can't do this. You can't play there. You can't. It's like, hold on a minute. There's a few things we fucking can do. Do you know what I mean? I'm not a bad player overnight. And don't just tell me I can't do this. We can't do that. I remember when we lost the cup final, it was like, what am I supposed to do with this lot? That was his line to us lot. And we was like, fucking hell, how about you? What can you do a little bit different? And so from that respect, you know, he comes in and he just transformed it. You know, as I said, the atmosphere that we had against Sheffield Wednesday, we won 8-0, the atmosphere coming into it, he just has that special effect. And in life, you meet people like that very occasionally, not very often. As I said, KK was like that he'd come down to London and he had that little bounce in his step, and you sort of gravitate to people like that. And just his speech, Bobby, letting you know it was coming from the heart, and it was genuinely about, let's get this club going again. So from that point of view, he just had that immediate effect, and straight away he had us on his side. You know, he had 6 or 7 us that was on his side, and that then went to Kieran Dyer, went to Bellas, went along to these younger players coming through, Aaron Hughes, all of these players, and we sort of had a feel-good factor again, and that translated on the field. We didn't do particularly well. We ended up being just above mid-table, but we clawed our way back into making St James's a bit of a fortress. We were still crap away from home. We wasn't good away from home, but we started to change things around and to started to progress. There was a sign that we was getting there. It may take 18 months, like I said, but to turn a club around that quickly, come from his man management skills, and also with the fans. You know, you don't realise sometimes as fans when you come in there, the atmosphere that you generate in that stadium gives you that inner belief as a player. You know, I've been used to playing in front of the crazy gang, 4,000 or 5,000 people. All of a sudden, I've got 52,000 Geordies screaming and shouting, and another 5 or 6 of them are watching us train at Maiden Castle and at you know, Chesley Street. So they're out there supporting you. That gives you such a lift, and it puts the opposition off. And we started to claw it out a little bit, and Alan started to score goals, and then we started to get Laurent Robert coming into the equation, and then, you know, you've got some good players then, and then you start winning games, and you know, that was the main thing for Sir Bobby Robson, to get that club back to competing, and it all come from him. You know, he guided us, he showed us, and his passion and his love for the club was infectious to everybody else.
I was as a right back, you must have had some fantastic views of some of Laurent Robert's goals, because I'll tell you, when you look back at them now, there were some fantastic goals in there.
Go. He's another one to watch on Instagram. He has the life. When I come back, I want to come back as him. He don't stop drinking wine, having great food, and smoking cigars. So and he still looks $1 million. It's unbelievable. So when I come back, I want to come back as Laurent Robert, because he looks like a movie star.
As a man who lives with a French other half, I've observed firsthand. They like to enjoy life, don't they?
Oh yeah.
Alan, were you gonna jump in there? It might have been Chris.
No, it's Chris. Yeah.
That's all right. No, just Warren. I just about coming off the Bobby Robson thing. Like, obviously, just it'd be remiss not to mention about your England career. And just for us, because you know, when we were talking about what we were going to ask you and so on, that you actually, you know, there's a notable connection here. It's a slightly sad one, but you did make your debut in the abandoned friendly against the Republic of Ireland at Lansdowne Road in 1995. I was just kind of wondering, we were kind of just wondering, how did it feel to kind of play in that game, and in particular, what are the memories of that day when you made your debut?
Yeah, no, again, it's supposed to be the proudest moment. I've been in the Terry Venables squad for probably about 6 or 8 months, and you know, been on the bench, never quite got on against Norway, Nigeria, Colombia as well. Never quite got on the field, but then Terry said, "Right, I'm gonna play you. I'm gonna play you out on Lansdowne Road. It's going to be, you know, a hostile environment to say the least, and you know, a passionate affair." But we went in there as a good faith. There was obviously, it'd been a number of years before England ever played over there with Jack Charlton, and you know, they'd had the boys playing at a high level of football and was doing well. So it was sort of it was supposed to be a special occasion of bringing the two teams together to celebrate what could be a friendship building on, and sport has a way of building a lot of bridges going forward. So we was all in good spirit. The people in the hotel was looking after us. I had all my family coming over, my mum, my dad, brother, my fiance, who's now my wife, coming over to see us. People to go over there, and you know, being with Paul Ince and Ian Wright in the hotel, getting ready, you know, looking forward to it. It's everybody's dream, you know, to represent your country now. Whether that's Germany, that's Ireland, England, whoever it is, to go and represent your country. You could tell by the atmosphere beforehand it was a bit hostile, but predominantly from the English. Well, there wasn't English fans, and they was above as you come out of Lansdowne Road as a player. Behind you was all the hospitality seats and the families was there, and above there was the upper tier was supposed to be the Irish fans, but the English fans was over to the right, and then they managed to get into some seats above, and then 20 minutes into the game, it was really, really windy. I was playing actually against one of my old former teammates, Terry Phelan, as well. We was having a chat beforehand, so Terry Phelan was there, and obviously we known a lot of the players we was playing against. The game kicks off, and Ireland was flying. They was doing really well. We was managing to get the ball on the ground a little bit, England, and then 23 minutes, 27 minutes, it all started to kick off, and bits of wood was being thrown. We tried to. I was on the other side of the field, so I didn't really notice anything, but then you could hear and see a lot of police, people coming onto the field, and my first thought was my fans and my family underneath where the fans were throwing the bit, but the Irish authority was fantastic. They got all our family out of there, made sure that they were safe coming there. Jack Charlton was brilliant, as well as all the staff coming to make sure that everybody's all right. Philo was brilliant. Terry was great, and people like Peter Beardsley, again, never really knew Peter that well, but he said, "It's all right, son. Don't worry about it. They'll all be okay." Tony Adams as well, and just so disappointing. And we felt like we was making big strides as fans, traveling around. And as I said, they're not true fans. They're just hooligans that went out there to cause trouble. And what was really for me, my family went back to a little hotel just off Grayson Street, just in the middle of town in Dublin. And the people there was so accommodating and friendly. There was no hostility against like my family, and not that I thought there would be, because how the Irish are. Never I thought that, but it could have quite easily like, fucking hell, we give you the opportunity and look what you do. And as I said, it was really disheartening for myself. But the English staff and the Irish staff said, look, keep it going and don't worry about it. You're going to get another chance. But it's like anything, gentlemen. It's your first one, and that's what people remember. And I wanted it to be remembered for a lot of other things. I still managed to get a cap, so that was one good thing. One good thing out of it. But it was so disheartening and disbelieving that something like that would happen at that time when it was supposed to be a celebration. And football's supposed to be something that you can cover the cracks in, and just don't worry about things, just let it go out there and play. But unfortunately that was the case. But it's brought us around to this, and it's made us feel like the game now is the most important thing, and hopefully now things have moved on, because that was the dark times of English football, really.
Well, Warren, let me just say that your debut here on our Irish Mag show has been far better and far more positive for everybody involved. And
it's been fucking longer as well. It's been longer as well. At least no one's thrown anything at me. At least no one's thrown anything. I'm all right.
Not yet. Not yet.
Yeah, not yet.
Brilliant.
See, we're recording this earlier than we usually would, Warren. So none of us have had a beer yet. So it's
not yet.
Well, you're not true. Hey, listen, you're not true Irishman. If you ain't had a drink yet, you're not Irishman.
Well, we're only saying that for the internet purposes. But look, I think it's obviously it's unfortunate that that's how that debut transpired. But like the feeling of playing for your country, Warren, like not many people obviously in the world would get to pull on the jersey playing for your country. You did obviously play again, I believe, Brazil and Sweden, if my research and if the internet doesn't have me mistaken. How did that feel, I suppose, playing for your country?
I mean, again, it was a big honour. It was the Umbro tournament, and to say my last game was at Wembley against Brazil, when people like the real Ronaldo was playing and Roberto Carlos. There's not too many that could say that. I would love to have more opportunities. I got called into some squads, but for whatever reason, Gary Neville was obviously an outstanding player and had a great relationship with David Beckham, and was a model professional. But they can't take that away from you. 3 caps. Absolutely. Sweden again up at Ellen Road, playing in that game, and then obviously coming on as sub in Wembley was great. So when I started off playing in the streets of North London and East London. I wanted to play in a FA Cup final and represent my country. Brian Robson was a big, I was I admired him. He was my favourite player. And I remember him playing for England. So to be able to do that, and Brian was actually a coach for Terry Venables. So that was great for him to be around and me to get my debut. So, yeah, I would like to have more. But, you know, Gary, as I said, was an outstanding player. Although I wouldn't tell him because his head's big enough as it is. So I wouldn't tell him. I'm only joking, Gav. I'm only joking. Don't get upset. Don't post anything. You know, we all love you. You're all wonderful. You created the world. Thank you, Gary.
He's typing a tweet as we speak.
Yeah. He's telling us all where we're going wrong. It must be wonderful to be perfect. It must be wonderful.
Absolutely. Super. Thank you so much for it. Like, obviously, we've been delving into some of your own football moments and your own Newcastle moments. We might get a couple more because we have a quick fire round before we're going to let you go. But I think we might just get some of your thoughts on like moving towards modern day Newcastle, Warren, and how we're doing. I suppose currently, like the success of the Eddie Howe era, for example, has really been largely built on this strong back five. Obviously, the last few weeks and months have been a challenge to that. But even last season, like the success was largely built on this incredible back five that we had, let's say with Pope and Trippier and Byrne, Botman and Cher. We'd love to pick your brain and get you talking about how you feel the current back five stacks up against, let's say, the main back five of your core time at Newcastle. So what we've gone with here would be maybe Cernacek or even Shay Given, because obviously we're on the Irish Mags show, and then yourself, maybe John Beresford, Steve Howie, Philip Albert and Darren Peacock and the like. An opportunity to stack yourself up against the current Newcastle fan.
Oh, you're a bad man. You're a bad man. I think we're better on a night out. Definitely. I think we're better on a night out. I think we can safely claim that. I mean, they have great understanding. I mean, my only thing, like I said, you know, do it over 5-6 seasons. You know, it's 5 or 6 months has been great, but you know, Pope's an excellent goalkeeper. He has that presence. I'm a big fan of Shay. I mean, not only as a person, but I think he's been the most consistent. The 400 appearances that he's made, over 400 for Ireland, over 100 as well. He's just a top-class goalkeeper. So they've still got a bit of a way to go. Trippier, and I've said it, he's a better player than I was. Again, but he's got to do it. He's had a little bit of a blip, but you know, he's dead balls. The way he passes the ball, the way he is. But let's see him play 200 odd games and then judge him from there. But Botman's a player. Botman's a Rolls Royce. He is a little bit like Philip Albert, maybe a little bit quicker until Philip got the knee injury. And again with Steve Howie, you know, Steve was a wonderful player, and Darren Peacock. I throw Peasy in there because Darren was a tremendous player, a bit of an unsung hero. You know, $2.5 million from Queen's Park Rangers. Darren, he come in there. He was an excellent player, Darren as well. But yeah, I think there's a lot of similarities where both fullbacks want to get forward. Big Dan is not a natural left back. I think Bez was a really good player. Very unfortunate. You talk about England caps, never ever to play for England. But he had Stuart Pearce and Graham Nassau in front of him. But I still think Bez was worthy of an opportunity to get out there. But yeah, they've got good chemistry at the back. I think it'll be a good game. As I said, I think they've probably got a bit more defensive stability. Our first thought as a back, particularly all four of us really, in front and Shay, was to go forward. So maybe that was a little bit different. But as I said, see if they can finish second twice, see if they can get in the Champions League and Cup finals, and then we'll judge them. And then we'll take them down the big market and see what they can do after that. But, you know, with all seriousness, I wish them all the best. And as I said, when Trippier signed, he's a proper player. You know, he's a proper signing. He set the benchmark. You know, he's had a little bit of a dip, like I did, like we've all done. It's how you respond. He had a really good performance against Sunderland, and I don't think there was any doubt. I mean, he's a top class player. He understands what the club's about. I had a bit of a chat with him in Philadelphia when they was over in pre-season, and he gets it. He gets what the club's about. I think he'll end up staying up there. He might end up on the coaching staff as well, being up there. And as I said, he's a top class. And Botman, I think, will be the captain of the club for a long time. Fabian Scher's just signed a new deal as well. He's just really. It goes back to Eddie as well. You know, man management under Steve. He couldn't get him in the team the way he was playing, and now, you know, Eddie's got him in a position where to be successful. He's got him fitter. He's got him understanding the game plan. He's got him switched on. Obviously, he's got good players next to him with Botman and Tripper. But even then, you know, when Jamel comes in, who I think's an outstanding player, the captain of the club, he's come in. They have a good relationship, and you know, they've done a good job with them because it gives you a good foundation going forward with your back line. So yeah, they're very, very good players.
Yeah, we actually had we inadvertently already previewed this comparison because we were kind of in our heads comparing the Philippe Albert goal against Manchester United in that 5-0 victory with Fabian Schär's strike against PSG, and we were just up the centre back scoring long range goals.
Yeah. I think Phillips was a bit more iconic, and the chip as well, and yeah, as I said, he was a wonderful person. Philip, he is a wonderful person. I haven't seen him for a while, but had a great sense of humour. Had a really good sense of humour, Philip.
And a great mustache as well in his day.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
So the final question of this section, Warren, then, and then we might just do a quick fire round for a minute or two before we let you go. But the last question we wanted to speak to you about would be your current role in San Diego, Warren, because I'd say not too many of our listeners would be aware of the fact, obviously, that you're over there now. Would you mind telling us a bit more about like what the work you're currently doing?
Yeah, by all means. Yeah, I retired in 05. 0405. I was in the middle of just finishing my A license. I've managed to do my pro license in 07. And my thought was always, me and my wife, to come over to America. We knew the game was growing and just the quality of life. And let's not beat around the bush. The sunshine, the third one, I've got it in now. So, you know, that was a big opportunity. So I knew the game was growing. I've been working with Sky and BBC and ITV doing some commentating work. And Fox approached me to come out here, knowing that I was out here anyway. But I got in the country with my pro license, and I started coaching for the Galaxy under Bruce Arena with the academy level. And at that time in 08, it was very much at the early stages and not really being run at the level that it is now. It's more of a club team that they was doing. And I couldn't really comprehend how kids was turning up in, you know, flip-flops and not training properly. And just the game hadn't got to where I was. And obviously I was doing a lot of work with Fox as well. So I still work with Fox. I did the Women's World Cup. I'm going to be out in Germany to do the Euros. I've been doing the Premier League for 11 years with Fox. I did the Champions League for 9.5 years. We've done World Cups in Qatar. So I still do the media work, but also part of my day-to-day is my kids. I had 3 young boys when I moved out here, 10, 8 and 4. They was always into football, stroke soccer. And I ended up coaching them in a program which is called Del Mar Sharks in Northern California. In Northern San Diego in California, which I've been a director with. It keeps me going day to day, coaching the kids, being involved in soccer. I want to get into the game, if I'm being honest. I did my pro license. I'd love to be a coach now, whether that's MLS, USL, Premier League, whatever it is. I'd love
come back, Warren. Come back.
Yeah,
come back.
I'd love to get involved in coaching. I feel I've got a lot to offer. I'm still young enough, you know. I still feel like I can do that. But my main reason to come to America was to be with my kids, and I was able to do that through the ages of 11, 12. Now my kids are older. My youngest one's 19. He only needs me for money and a new car, so and a text message now and again. But other than that, it's all good. So yeah. I have a nice life. I can't complain. You know, it's a big change. I miss my family. I miss the football, the feel of it, and the intensity that everything cares and everything matters. But the game over here is really growing. It has that model. A lot of the stadiums now, Pacific soccer stadiums, have great academies, the coaching level. So I'm hoping to get involved in the game at a high level. But I love where I am. San Diego's actually just got an MLS team that's going to be in 2025. I'm having interviews with them, so I'd love to be involved in that. But you know, your face has to fit, and I've just got to keep persevering. But I'm not complaining. I wake up every morning, it's sunny. I enjoy, and better still, we beat Mackham, so we're winning. So that makes it all that bit brighter. So yeah, it's all good. It's all good.
And we're going to finish on that note to talk a little bit about the Mackhams. We've 4 or 5 just quick fire questions for you, Warren, if you don't mind, some cool facts that we'd really love to know and share with our listeners. So we'll speed through them. And just for the record, folks, he hasn't seen these questions, so we'll be getting the true answers straight from the horse's mouth. Best player you ever played with?
Week in, week out would be Peter Beardsley, but Gaza getting ready for England, Euro '96. He was on a different level then. But Peter Beardsley for me, was the best player week in, week out. Ginola, when he first come, he done things that I'd never seen before, but Pedro for me was the best player that I played with week in, week out.
Wow.
Incredible. And flip it around, best player you ever played against?
Again, week in, week out would have been Ryan Giggs at that team with Manchester United, you know, with Roy, Paul Scholes, Beckham, and obviously Ryan on that left-hand side week in. Harry Kewell was always a very good player. But we played against Juventus with Zidane, and I think he was that level above at that time. Me, Rob, and Gary was trying to get a ball off of him, and he did a pirouette and then passed it with the outside of his foot. He was just that streets ahead of us at that time. So Zidane's the best I've ever played against. Ronaldo, when, you know, he was the real Ronaldo, but you know, you can't say 3.5 minutes you played against him. So Zidane was, yeah, there you go.
More than most. Favorite opposition kit that you have, like from an exchange?
Oh, the Barcelona one, when we played them in the Champions League. Very iconic. I remember the Kappa. So yeah, I mean, that would be one that I keep. I've also got the Roma one from Totti. So that's when we played them. But that's it. Yeah, the Roma one was good, and Juventus, obviously the black and white one. But yeah, I swapped with Patrick Vieira, which is a good one, and obviously Ryan I've swapped. So yeah, but I think them ones, the Barcelona, has a special feeling to it, and it's Luis Enrique's one. So there you go.
Some jersey.
You got in his mind early because he came back with PSG as manager.
I know, exactly. He didn't ask for my shirt then when we beat him 4-1.
He wasn't asking for anyone's that night.
No, exactly.
Excellent. Your best game for Newcastle?
I always think it's someone else's, but I had a really good game when Kenny Dalglish, last game of the season, we beat Nottingham Forest 5-0. It managed to get us into the Champions League with the goal differential and the win. I had a couple of assists. Les got a couple of goals. And what was even pleasing, not only did we get in the Champions League, we finished second. And Sunderland and Middlesbrough got relegated that season. So I think it was like 96, 97. So yeah, it was a special time. That was a good game. But yeah, I think that one really jumps out. Personally, I was here, there, and everywhere. So yeah, that's one that jumps out for me. We beat Forest 5-0.
Love that. Love that, and the impact on the neighbours as well.
Yes,
exactly.
Yeah, I love it.
No.
And last for the quick fire, favorite Newcastle United anecdote that you were allowed to share with us. And of course our listeners and the internet.
Okay, yeah. There's lots of stories. Let me come back to you on that one. Let me come back to you. I think I'll put that on a pause. But there's lots of things I want to bring up. But I just have to remember who might be listening. But I'll save that. I'll tell you what, I'll save it for another day. Save it for
next time.
Brilliant.
Yeah, exactly. I'll tease you with that one.
Right. So before we let you go, and folks, we are going to come back for a second part of this week's podcast with myself, Alan, and Chris Show, because we're going to delve a bit more into the Irish Mags events at the weekend, and obviously the Sunderland game and the upcoming games. But the one thing we want to talk to Warren about before we let him go back to the sunshine is about playing in the derby. And obviously, Warren, we'd love to hear your thoughts about what you watched at the weekend as well and experienced. So maybe if you could just fill us in. I believe you played in 6 Tyne-Wear derbies, if the research that we've done here is correct. How does, you've played in a lot of games for many different clubs in many different places, but what's it like playing in the Tyne-Wear derby?
Oh, it's Newcastle or Sunderland. Yeah, no, it's Sunderland. It's special. It's Sunderland's the big one. You know, Smoggies was good to go down to there. They had a good team. We always used to do reasonably well against Middlesbrough. But the real derby games is Sunderland. You know, the build up before. They didn't like us, and we didn't particularly like them. And that's, you know, Kevin Ball, Mickey Gray, Quinny, Phillips, all of them guys. You know, there was no. We got on with each other, Summerby, but we didn't particularly like each other in that respect. So that was mutual. And you know, Benno's been great. Gary Bennett does a lot for Show Racism and Red Card. We come across each other, but it's always polite. You know, me, Bez, and Shaka, we're just being polite, and that was just being faithful to the fans and to each other. You know, Kevin was red and white through and through, and when we had Lee Clark next to us, he was black and white through and through. So, you know, it's great for the area, you know, and I mean that to say that the whole region, when we was all in the Premier League, when we was all competing, when we was all doing well, it was a special time in the Northeast because it is disliked. You know, there's no beating around the bush. They don't like us. We don't like that. And you could see that with the old lady that wanted to have a fight with one of our fans outside. It's in their blood, and you know, that's part and parcel of it. And it's a special game. The atmosphere that we had going there at the Stadium of Light, I would be polite, I will call it the Stadium of Light. Remember Roker Park, we went there was hardly any fans. We won 2-1. Les got the header to win, and just that deathly silence, and then you'd hear a couple of Geordies scream out and cheer, and then followed by a bit of a fisticuff and screaming and shouting and fighting going on when that was happening. But you know, we had our bus bricks thrown at it when we was leaving Tyne and Wear. But it's all part of it, you know. And I never want it to change, you know. I never want it to change and to be like that, and to have scarves that have both clubs on it. It ain't like that. It's not like that at all. So it's great for the area. It was a great result. I was really looking forward to the game. I wouldn't say nervous, but they had nothing to lose. They had everything to gain, and we went out there and dominated the first half. Got the goal that we deserved, an own goal, and then the second one really set the tone. And just the fans afterwards, and then, you know, one of the pictures that I put out there is when we equalised in the last minute. They thought they was going to beat us, and we equalised. And just going up to their fans and putting my ears up to my ears, and they want to kill you. They want to hurt you. They want to do you. And then I had the safety of 7,000 or 8,000 Geordies looking after me.
Unfortunately, Warren's connection actually just dropped when we were about to let him go and bid our farewells and say thank you. We've obviously given him loads of praise. We sent a message to say thank you for joining us. But if you were watching on YouTube, you will have noticed he was dialed in from the car. So fair play to him for giving us all that time. It was an excellent interview, lads. And he didn't hold back on any of the questions we asked. And to reiterate, he was not sent any of them to prepare. And I think if he wasn't going to bother reading them. I honestly, like, I've been doing podcasts here and there. We've been doing this a little while, lads. But that was just an excellent experience to hear all the stories. And as I said, he just gave us everything he had from his head, from the heart. Which was great. Any particular highlights from that segment, lads? I think we had about 45 minutes with Warren Barton, which was amazing. Alan, anything that stands out for you in terms of the stories he was telling us?
Come here, listening to his stories about his debut at Lansdowne Road is amazing. The fact that he then got to play against Sweden and Brazil, and he got to play against the real Ronaldo, just he had some career as an international without having a very long career. He had some games to play, to be fair to him. So it's just really, really interesting listening to him talk about that.
Yeah, it was pretty cool, and great to have a little Irish connection there.
Yeah,
obviously, I'm sure you said it yourself in the interview. It was a slightly sadder one, obviously, but nevertheless, you know, he's got a connection there somewhat, even just by the fact that he made his debut for England against
Absolutely.
Ireland. Christian, what about yourself? Anything that stood out from obviously our Q&A, our questions, and like I said, the anecdotes and all this, the history he was giving us?
Yeah, like I said, when we were talking to him, he made an excellent debut with us, and hopefully on Twitter, Shay will see it and want to get in ahead of him, or get in a second. But thanks very much, Warren, for joining us. I think like that, apart from like talking about the jerseys that he has, which was excellent, like the fact that when we asked him, he's played with such a lot of good players, and when he said Peter Beardsley, I was really chuffed, because Peter Beardsley is. I've always watched him when I was playing football myself, and wanted to understand how you knock the ball between left and right, and how he was so accurate and brilliant. Andy Cole wouldn't have been half the player without Peter Beardsley alongside him. So for Warren Barton to come out and say Peter Beardsley, I mean, that's a top class player. So I was really chuffed with that, like really chuffed, because I didn't know what he was going to say, but the fact he said Peter Beardsley, I was chuffed with it.
I mean, never mind. As you said, he had a lot of choices, but I think, you know, we might have a few younger listeners that might not remember or have seen too much of Peter Beardsley, and he's had some bad press in his kind of post-playing career here and there, and we don't need to go into too much detail on that. But as a player, not just for Newcastle, but when he was at Newcastle, that's an unbelievable player. What he could do with his feet for someone who wasn't particularly small or nimble or low center of gravity, but just the ball control, the technique, the vision, and the intelligence was unreal. I loved listening to was one of the things I was looking forward to, and sometimes you don't know if they're going to admit it. When we were talking to him about the decision to move to Newcastle and who else was on the table, there's a serious sense of smugness to be taken in satisfaction when a player chooses Newcastle. He mentioned Dalglish had been looking at him when he had just won the league at Blackburn, or maybe before that. I think he said something about talking to David Dean at Arsenal, and Warren said himself he was an Arsenal fan.
That's a big pull for us.
Yeah. Sheffield Wednesday under Trevor Francis, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like, again, for younger listeners, they were a solid Premier League team back in the day, top 10 finishes and the like. So yeah, I love hearing that. And then obviously just the pride and the absolute, like, unequivocal, I made the right decision. And how King Kev said to him, come to a big club, and that's exactly
come to a big club.
I think you should come back. I think you should come back and join the setup at Newcastle and work with the youth.
We've planted the seed, that's for sure.
That's it. Get him in there.
Right. Well, look, that brings an end to part 1 of this week's episode. We've decided, because we simply had far too much content to discuss with Warren, and we wanted to obviously spend as much time with Warren as we could, we've decided to do an extra special second part of this week's episode, which will be released on Friday. So the Warren Barton episode, by the time you're listening to this, obviously would have been released on Wednesday. So on Friday, we'll do part 2. We'll have a quick breakdown of the Irish Mags experience of that magnificent win over Sunderland at the weekend, because there was a lot of meetups and a lot of crackhead. We will be discussing the latest transfer rumors on the horizon, because there's a few new names have surfaced this week. So we feel we need to give that a little bit of airtime. We'll have Chris Show's very, very famous / infamous bad take of the week, before then turning our attention to the Man City game on Saturday. A huge thank you again to Warren Barton for joining us. An honor to have him on the show as our first ever ex-Newcastle United player and legend, and not a bad one at all. If you've enjoyed the episode today, folks, of course, do the usual. Don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe, and rate us wherever you can and wherever you are tuning in. Until Friday, though, how away the lads, Slán, go fall, and of course, we'll see you all very soon. Say goodbye, gentlemen.
Slán, lads.
Slán, and see you soon.